The call came in at 6:47 on a Tuesday night. I know the exact time because I was standing in the garage looking for my socket wrench when my phone buzzed on the workbench. I almost didn't answer. I thought it was a spam call, one of those extended warranty things. But I looked down and saw it was my dad's number, and something in my chest told me to pick up before it hit the second ring. "Dad? You okay?" There was a pause, long enough that my hand tightened around the phone. I fell. His voice was small. My father does not have a small voice. He's a 79-year-old man who spent 32 years working construction in western Pennsylvania, and he sounds like it. Gravelly. Certain. That night, he sounded like neither of those things. "Where are you? You still at the house? Kitchen floor. I think it's my hip." I can't get up, son." I was already moving. My truck was in the shop. Had been for 4 days, something with the transmission, and the mechanic said it wouldn't be ready until Thursday at the earliest. I'd been borrowing my wife's car to get to work, and she'd been driving the company van she used for her interior design clients. We'd worked it out. It was fine. Or it was fine until that moment. My wife, I'll call her Renata because that's what we called her since the day she made everyone start using her full name at some dinner party 3 years ago, was upstairs getting ready. We were supposed to go to her colleague's birthday dinner in Shadyside. Reservation at 8. She'd been looking forward to it for 2 weeks. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time. "My dad fell," I said. "I need your car. I have to go." She was standing in front of the mirror putting on earrings. She looked at me through the reflection. "How bad is it?" "He can't get up. He thinks it's his hip." She set down the second earring and turned around slowly. And the look on her face, I want to be careful here because I want to be fair, was not panic. It was not worry. It was the look of someone doing math. "Can't you call an ambulance?" I blinked. "I'm his son. He's on the floor. I'm going." "I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying the ambulance is literally designed for this. That's what they're for." "Renata." He's scared. He's been on that floor for who knows how long before he called me. "I'm not sending strangers." She exhaled through her nose. "Okay, but I already told Bridget we'd be there. She's been planning this for a month. Can't you just— I need your keys." The silence that followed was maybe 4 seconds. 4 seconds is a long time when your father is on a kitchen floor 70 miles away. "I have a dinner, Lawrence." She used my full name. She only used my full name when she'd already made her decision. "He's 79 years old," I said. "He fell. He's alone." "I know. And I'm sorry. But you said yourself he might just need to get up and ice something. Can't he call his neighbor?" "What's his name? The guy across the street?" "Ted moved to Florida in January." "Then call 911, Lawrence. That's the responsible thing anyway. What if he needs x-rays? You're not a doctor. You can't do anything an ambulance can't do better." I stood there for a second and looked at her. Really looked at her. And I thought about every time she'd been sick and I'd driven to 3 different pharmacies because one didn't have the right brand of throat spray. I thought about her mother's hip surgery 2 years ago and how I took 3 days off work and slept in a chair in that hospital room so she didn't have to be alone overnight. I thought about all the times I drove her clients' fabric swatches across town because she was double booked. I didn't say any of that. I just said, "Give me your keys or don't, but I'm going." She picked up the earring she'd set down, put it on, looked in the mirror again. "Take an Uber," she said. "I'll meet you there after dinner if it's serious." I looked at her for one more moment. Then I walked downstairs, called my dad back, told him I was coming and ordered an Uber. The driver was a young guy named Devin, couldn't have been more than 23. He had a Pittsburgh Steelers air freshener hanging from the mirror and a water bottle in the cuff holder. When I got in and said I needed to get to Kittening as fast as he could legally drive, he just nodded and didn't say another word the whole way there. I sat in that back seat for an hour and 12 minutes. I called my dad 4 times to keep him talking. His voice got a little steadier with each call, which helped. He'd managed to get his phone off the counter, had to use a wooden spoon to knock it down, and he'd pulled a folded dish towel under his head. He was trying to make me laugh about it. I'm basically camping, he said. I did not laugh. My father's name is Chester. No, wait. I said I'd use real names for some and not others. My dad's name, I'll call him by what he asked me to call him my whole life, which was just Pop. So, Pop is not a man who asks for things. When my mum died 6 years ago, he didn't ask any of us kids to come home. We came anyway, but he didn't ask. When he had that polyp removed 2 years ago, he drove himself to the procedure and called me from the parking lot on the way out. Not before. After. That's who he is. So when he called me that night and said I fell, I knew it was bad. He would have stayed on that floor until morning before calling if it wasn't. The Uber pulled up to the house and I was out the door before Devin put it in park. I didn't even think about what I'd find until I was already at the front door. He was in the kitchen, like he said, on his side between the table and the counter. He'd gotten himself propped up a little. He looked up at me when I came in and he said, "Took you long enough," which is his version of relief. I got down on the floor next to him. I didn't try to move him yet. Just sat there with him for a minute. "Does it hurt when you breathe?" "No." "Okay. We're going to the hospital. It might just be bruised." "Pop, I'm just saying. We're going to the hospital." He didn't argue again. I got him up slowly, and I could tell from the way he held his breath when I moved his left side that it wasn't just bruised. He let me put his arm over my shoulder. He's lost weight since Mum died. I noticed that in a way I hadn't noticed it on holidays, in the daylight when things felt normal. I called another Uber from the driveway because it was faster than an ambulance wait in that county and Pop was stable enough to sit. The driver this time was a woman, 50s, who took one look at us and said, "St. Margaret's." She didn't ask how she knew. She just knew. "St. Margaret's," I said. She drove smooth the whole way, didn't hit a single pothole hard. I don't know if she was being careful on purpose. I think she was. I didn't get her name and I've thought about that since. We were at the ER by 8:40. The fracture was confirmed by 10:15. Left femoral neck. The kind that needs surgery, not rest. I called my sister from the waiting room. She lives in Columbus, 4 hours away. She started crying immediately, which is her way, and then she got quiet and started asking the right questions, which is also her way. She said she'd be there by morning. I did not call Renata. I found a row of chairs near the window and I sat in them. Vending machine coffee. A TV in the corner running a home improvement show on mute. The kind of hospital quiet that isn't really quiet. It's beeping and low voices and the soft wheels of gurneys, and I sat in the middle of all of it for 4.5 hours. I thought about a lot of things. I thought about Pop teaching me to drive a stick shift in the parking lot of a Kmart when I was 15. I thought about how he came to every single one of my baseball games until I was 22, including the college ones, including the away games, including the ones that were 5 hours from home. I thought about how after my mom got sick, he learned to cook because she couldn't anymore, and he got pretty good at it, and he never once complained about having to learn. I thought about being 17 and breaking my arm and how he stayed in that hospital with me the whole night, even though he had to be at a job site at 5 in the morning. I did not think about the dinner in Shadyside. My phone buzzed at 11:08. A text from Renata. "How is he?" I put the phone back in my pocket. At 1 in the morning, the surgeon came out and told me they'd scheduled the procedure for tomorrow afternoon, and that Pop was stable and resting and I could see him for a few minutes if I wanted. I did. He was in a bed with that paper-thin hospital blanket up to his chest. He had an IV in his arm. He looked small in the way that big men look small in hospital beds, and I had to stand there for a second before I could go in. "You're still here," he said. "Where else would I be?" He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Your mother would have liked you. The man you turned out to be." He says things like that sometimes. Just drops them right into a regular moment. I've never figured out how to respond to it, so I usually just squeeze whatever part of him I can reach. I squeezed his hand. "Get some rest," I said. "You should go home. I'll be in the waiting room." Lawrence, waiting room, Pop. He closed his eyes. Not long after, he was asleep. I went back to the chairs. My sister arrived at 4:30 in the morning, still in her road trip clothes, carrying 2 coffees from a gas station 40 minutes away because she knew the hospital wouldn't have anything decent at that hour. She handed me one and sat down and didn't say anything for a while. That's the thing about family. Sometimes the presence is the whole point. Surgery went well the next afternoon. Pop was groggy and annoyed about the catheter. He made sure we knew that, but he came through clean. The surgeon said 6 to 8 weeks recovery, probably some physical therapy after. He'd need help around the house for a while. I drove home the following evening in a rental car I paid for out of pocket. Renata was in the living room when I got there. She'd made dinner, was in the living room when I got there. She'd made dinner, pasta, garlic bread, the kind of meal that's meant to reset things. She stood up when I came in and asked how he was. I told her. She said she was glad he was okay. She said she was sorry she hadn't come. I said, yeah. She waited for more. I didn't have more. Over the next few weeks, things between us went on a kind of surface level. We talked about the house, about schedules, about Pop's recovery. She asked once if I was upset with her, and I said I needed some time. She seemed to accept that. She was good at accepting things when it was convenient. Here's what I didn't tell her. Not right away, Pop had called his attorney the week before he fell. He'd been thinking about updating his estate plan for a while. My mother's portion, some property he'd held on to, the house. Things he'd been meaning to organize. The fall moved up the timeline. Pop has 3 kids. Me, my sister, and my brother out in Arizona, who I'll call by what we call him, which is just Benny. Benny is a decent enough guy, but he and Pop have had distance between them for a long time. Not from any big fight, just from years of not closing the gap. They called the hospital when I texted him about the surgery. He didn't come. Renata knew about Pop's property in a vague way. She knew he owned his house outright, that there was some land in Butler County that had been in the family since his father's time, and that there was a savings account my mother had put together carefully over 40 years. She'd made a comment once, at a Christmas dinner, a few glasses of wine in, about how it had all come to us eventually. I let it go at the time. But there's something about sitting in a hospital waiting room at 2 in the morning with gas station coffee and a paper blanket that clarifies things, not dramatically, not in a lightning bolt way, just quietly, like things settling into the places they were always going to land. About 6 weeks after the surgery, Pop was doing his physical therapy and getting around with a walker. My sister and I had been trading off weekends up there. He was working. He was getting stronger. One afternoon he called me and he said, I finished up with the attorney. I said okay. He said, I want you to know what I did. I told him he didn't have to tell me. He said, I know I don't have to. I want to. He'd divided things between me, my sister, and a small amount to Benny. The house would stay in a trust until he was gone, then come to me and my sister equally. The Butler County land to me specifically, because I'm the one who'd gone up there with him since I was a kid and he knew I'd take care of it. The savings split between me and my sister. Then he said, I didn't include Renata specifically, that was intentional. I was quiet. You're my son, he said, not her. And after what you told me about that night, I thought about it a lot. What a person does when it counts. That tells you everything about who they are. I hadn't told him the full story, just the outline. But Pop has always been able to read between lines. 32 years in construction, you learn which structures will hold and which ones won't. I don't know how Renata found out. These things get around, I suppose. She had a cousin who worked in insurance, some paperwork that crossed a desk somewhere, or maybe just conversation. I never got a clear answer. But about 2 months after Pop's call to me, she brought it up at dinner. I heard your father updated his will. I looked up from my plate. I heard I wasn't included. I set my fork down. It's his will, I said. It's his decision. We've been married 11 years, Lawrence. I know how long we've been married. I've never done anything to that man. There it was. The framing I'd been waiting for. I've never done anything to that man. As if the question was what she'd done to him and not what she'd failed to do for me. This isn't about him, I said. She looked at me for a long moment, and something shifted in her face. Some calculation she was doing. Some door she was deciding whether to open. So it's about the car, she said. She said it like it was small, like it was petty. It's not about the car, I said. Then what? I thought about how to say it. I'd been thinking about how to say it for months, actually. You rehearse things like this in the quiet moments, in the car, in the shower, at 2 in the morning in plastic chairs. When it counted, I said. You weren't there. Not for him. Not for me. And I've been trying to figure out if that was one night, or if that's just who we are now. She was quiet. And I think, I said, I think it's who we are now. She left the table. I heard her in the bedroom for a while. Then the house got quiet. I don't want to tell the rest of it like it was easy, because it wasn't. 11 years isn't nothing. There were good years in there, real ones, and I'm not the kind of man who pretends otherwise. Deciding to end something that was once good is not a relief. It's more like a grief of its own. You mourn it even while you're doing it. But I also know this. There's a version of a person you see on ordinary days, and there's a version you see on the hard ones. The hard ones are the truth. She called me 19 times the week I stayed at Pop's. Not 38, 19. I want to be accurate. 19 calls in 6 days. Voicemails about lawyers, about the house, about things she wanted to make sure were settled. The calls stopped when the attorney got involved on my side. Pop watched me go through it from his recliner in the living room. He was doing the crossword most mornings, getting sharper as he got stronger. Some days he had physical therapy and he'd come back a little worn out, but always in a decent mood. He said it helped to have something to work toward. One evening I was doing dishes and he came in with his walker and just stood in the doorway for a minute. "You okay?" he said. "Working on it. You'll be all right." "I know. You're not the kind of man who stays down." I looked at him over my shoulder. "Neither are you," I said. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. Then he said, "Get those pots before they dry. You know how I feel about water spots." I did know how he felt about water spots. I've known since I was 9. I finished the dishes. We watched the Pirates game. He fell asleep in the chair before the 7th inning, which is what he does, which is what he's always done. And I turned down the volume and let him sleep and sat there in the quiet of his house, in the house I grew up in, and I thought about how strange it is that you can lose things and find things in the same season. The property in Butler County is about 22 acres, mostly wooded, some open fields, a creek that runs along the eastern edge. Pop's father bought it in 1961 for almost nothing. We used to go up there when I was a kid, in the fall mostly, and Pop would walk the land and not say much, and I'd follow him and not say much either, and it was one of the best things I remember from childhood. That comfortable quiet between two people who don't need to fill the air. I went up there a few weeks ago for the first time in years. Parked at the gate, walked the fence line. The creek was running. The leaves were starting to turn. I stood there for a while and I thought about my dad on a kitchen floor in October, using a wooden spoon to knock his phone down so he could call his son. I thought about him saying, "Your mother would have liked you." I thought about gas station coffee and paper blankets and a woman who drove smooth over every pothole because she understood something without being told. I'm not angry anymore. I was for a while. Not a loud angry, a quiet one, which in some ways is worse. But it passed. These things do when you let them. What I'm left with is something simpler. Some people show up, some don't. And when you've been around long enough, you learn that distinction, just that one, is just about the whole thing. I called Pop on the way back to my truck. "How's the land?" he said, like he knew where I'd been. "Good," I said. "It's real good up here, Pop." "Always is in the fall," he said. "Always is."